Hopefully you guys were right with me in Twitch channel a little while ago, and now that we've switched to YouTube, we are gonna respect the poll. And so thank you for your votes. We're gonna focus more on middle game and end game rather than specifically on Maroczy. And so I'm gonna show you this position. First of all, let's do about 10 to 12 puzzles that are very cool, and some of you might have seen similar teams in the Twitch channel a few hours ago. And so ideally we're gonna do some of these puzzles, and then I'm gonna show you how to beat Kasparov in 13 steps. So yeah, this one is black to move. Feel free to start calculating and making candidate moves, and let me know what you think is the right move. I'm going to be monitoring the chat from the other computer. Hi everyone, I see a lot of familiar usernames. Yeah, so the title of How to Beat Kasparov in 13 Steps is actually, this is a game from one of my favorite books, Giants of Strategy, and I finally found the book online as well because I had the physical copy, which is packed away somewhere in my dorm room. And so yeah, I'm kind of taking the cool title, and it's very catchy. And it actually shows you step 1, you do that, step 2, you do that. Very cool. So I have ideas with f5 and c5. So yeah, maybe calculate and see. So it's not about like a tactic, or it's not like a mate in 2, it's not like that. It's more about what do you think your position needs right now. So if you think your position needs f5, sure. If you think your position needs c5, sure. So it's for your understanding to tell me what you think your position needs. c5 does look very nice, but if you say c5, you have to be prepared for the exchange, because if c5, most likely the logical move is to take bishop takes b7, rook takes b7, and what do you think black will do next? White will do next. White could push the pawn, white could defend the pawn, so that's the main thing that you should consider if you're suggesting c5. Oh, hi Tracy. Wait, why aren't you with your club account? So I agree that f5 looks a little bit weird. And so the problem with f5 is that simply when you enter the end game, it gives your opponent some targets like e6 to use. And the other thing to consider is, okay, right now this bishop is much more efficient than this bishop, so it's a good idea to try and exchange it off. So the only thing that you should calculate is after c5, well, taking is the only move, because if the bishop goes away, d4 falls, right? So the only thing to seriously consider is take, and then if rook comes to d2, you always have rook d7, and it's some sort of a transposition, because eventually this d5 is going to happen and you're going to get into this position. And after take, do you think this position is good for white, good for black? Is it a draw? So yeah, again, like I said, this is not a tactic, this is not a super deep strategy, it's just understanding understanding what your position needs and doing that. It is very, like, it's super drawish. So basically you just bring in your king, and there's not much black can do. White can do. Black has this pressure over here a little bit, but can't really do much about it. White has some pressure, could maybe bring in the king up until here, but there is not much hope for either of them, so it is a draw. It is possible Black could keep pushing on d5, but it's highly unlikely to actually win it. Let's say even if you bring in some king and stuff, how are you going to actually try to put more pressure here? Like, you would eventually try to play something like this, and White could just play a4, and it is drawish. So yeah, I agree. Okay, so this was the first position. Already raising a lot of comments and challenges, huh? So, what do you think about this one? This one is White's to move. Told you, endgame, some strategy in endgame. Hi, Storm. So, what do you think your position needs in this position? Now, also, who do you think is better, White or Black? Hi, Raymond. So the idea of a4 is very, very nice, good job, but you have to prepare for it. You can't, it's not the best to just play a4 right away. And so, knowing that, how can you prepare for it? Oh, I forgot to mention, these puzzles are from a selection of the Artur Yusupov games. He wrote 9 books, like 3 different book series, and these actually helped my chess a lot. I did all of those 9 books. So like there are 3 series of 3 books. The first one of each series is kind of doable and easy right now for most of you, or for those of you who are just making the transit to intermediate, then that's actually good for you. The first set, this is the second books. Third books are actually pretty hard. Takes me a while to try and figure those out. So you probably want to play b3. Yes, b3 is the right move. And so the idea is you just simply want to push for, a4. And so let's say Black tries to play a little tricky. What do you do next? Yeah, Artur Yusupov. He's a very great author and a chess player. So let's say rook e5. Your first instinct should be to move the king somewhere. How? Philippines, wow. Thank you for watching. Rook a6 is interesting, but your first instinct should be to move the king, especially because this might be coming up. So, instinct, move the king. Thank you, Tim Olsen. Very nice of you to say so. I'm glad to be here too. Yes, king d3. Very well done. You activate your king, you take away some squares from the knight, and so are you guys familiar with how it's a cool idea to have the bishop against the knight like this? Right? Because this bishop against the knight, it kind of paralyzes both pieces, but the knight more, because the bishop is still controlling a lot of the squares, but the knight has a lot of trouble jumping around. So, let's say black plays f5 and is pushing for more, possibly. So what do you want to do? Your opponent wants to play f5. He played f5, wants to play f4. What is the first thing you want to do? Instinct. What does your gut tell you? Your opponent wants to play f4. How do you not let him? g3. Yes. Great. Proud of all of your guts. Why not knight c5? I mean knight c5. First of all, what do you do after maybe king up? You have knight d7. Well, the first thing is that these are tricky endgames, so it is, if you go to the rook endgame, the king is much more, white's king is much more activated than black's king, so that's automatically slightly better for white. So as black, you wouldn't want to enter that. So just by eyeballing it, that's the reason the rook endgame would be better for white. So f5, g3, black tries to bring in the king. What do you do with white? There is a delay in the video. 24 seconds of delay. Knight c5 was check, so okay, what do you want to do with white? Yes, good job, Nixon. So rook a6. Black has very limited options. b4 seems to be the only one that actually keeps the pawn. Now what do you do? All of you are going to find this. I mean, f4, oh, delay. Never mind. So after b4, you could potentially do something that you wanted to do from, yes, thank you, a4. So now this is getting kind of bad for black because this is a clear target and white is going to go after it. So the best thing black could do is to try and give a check, which you do king d4. You have to be very careful with these little tricks, because if you were to take right now, this is still a better rook endgame for white, but rook endgames are very, very slippery, and ideally you don't want to give that chance to your opponent. So that is why instead of entering the rook endgame, you do king d4. Now, do you think the king d4 is good or bad? So after king d4, the things you definitely have to calculate are taking the rook, and somehow you would have to calculate some takes for black, because one of the takes is knight takes a6, the other take could be rook takes e3, and there are no viable checks, and something like knight d7 doesn't really count. It's just awkward. You just have rook a7. So you could, if take, you just take here and f5 is falling, bishop b6, bishop a5 is coming. So knight takes a6 is not a viable option. What about rook takes e3? What do you guys think Yusupov did after rook takes e3? So after rook takes e3, yeah, yep. And rook e7 pretty much the only one. Take, king takes c5, and king in warfare, winning endgame. Yep. So this is how Yusupov beat Anand. So how about this one? This is another cool endgame. It is white to move. And what should white do? Some of the things to consider is that, first of all, your king is much more active than his king. And what you can do is to calculate and figure out what does black want. Does black want to come over here, king f5? If you figure out what black wants to do, then you can try to block it. Yes, good job everyone. In the last one, thank you for giving me full lines. And that's just winning. That endgame is just, yep. King d5 looks very tempting, but you have something more accurate. Yes, good job. h4. So the idea of h4 is no more king g5, and if king comes to f5, you can just play g3. No king g4 because of bishop e6, and now that here is fixed, then you can go after this guy. So what if knight goes to b8? So remember how we talked about what black wants to get the king over here? Now that the knight is not there, that is possible. So maybe you could think about a way to keep the black king away. Bishop b5 is interesting, but I think the problem with bishop b5 is that it's too chilled. Because let's say you try to go after that. It's possible to take king g3, push. Yeah. And then this would be a draw. So be careful to not let your opponent slip like this. That's why the better move is not bishop b5, and it's something to try and block the king coming in from to g4. Bishop d3, interesting. I believe bishop d3 is good. Something slightly more precise than bishop d3. I haven't seen that move in the chat yet. Bishop d4 is not possible. Bishop d3, it's good, but king e4, good, but again not the most precise. So think about it in another way too. Where do you want, so the king is going to get here, and that's when the real danger is, right? So just play bishop e2. Take that square of it, because f5 isn't dangerous. G4 is dangerous. Great. King Lear, I believe you were the first one to say bishop e2. Good job. And so the idea is, if you were to just play king f5, sure, I just played g3, you cannot get in anywhere. Now I just play king d5, maybe bishop f3, eventually king d5, just go after these pawns. Or instead of trying to play something like g3, I could just bring in the king. Or I could even consider taking over here. So my point is that there are options. There are a lot of options. So let's say king e6. What do you want to do now? So the point is, eventually, at some point later, you're gonna take this guy. So you want your pieces to be ready when you take that to start push. So that's something you could work around. G3 is interesting. King c5, maybe, but you want your king to come to the king side. So those of you who are saying king e4 are correct. And black is now also in some sort of a zugzwang. If king goes to here, you just can't go there. If king goes to f6, king can't go to d5. So that's why black tried to play something like knight d7. Just be careful not to blunder your stuff, you know, the usual. So king f4 first, and then take. And just chilled out, bring your king, and then start pushing your pawns. So yeah, it is... the whole game followed a very logical path, and you didn't let your opponents get too creative and try to slip away too much. So that is the theme that we are going for right now. This one is black to move, and I know these are not as interesting than the tactics and all of those fun stuff that we were doing, but it's still a good idea to know how to win the equal looking endgames, and that's why I'm doing it today. And then after that we have the Kasparov 13 step to cheer you up a little bit. You want to see me in banter blitz? Why not? So this one is black to move. You can already see some stuff that are advantage, could be considered advantage towards black. First of all, bishop against knight. Second of all, the activated king. So those are some stuff that you can start to work around. And I think the main question is how to get your king in. Possible, it could happen from exchange of Slav. Knight b6, interesting, but that doesn't help your king get in. You want to play e5, don't know why. e5 is... I think e5 is worth considering. I don't think it's the best move, mainly because if you play e5, you are giving your opponent some squares and stuff to start jumping around. So that would be my reason for not playing e5. And yeah, king c6, b6, a5. So your first move should be king c6. And then you will be faced with king f2. So now, how do you want to get in? How do you want to get your pieces in? This is actually quite long endgame until we reach the winning position. So it's not like a chop chop win position, as you guys can already guess. So you can't just bring the king in because the knight is here. So you have to get a little creative and move some other pieces around a little bit. Yes, moving the bishop is the best one. Ideally not bishop c4, because you want to try and keep your bishop. Even if taking is not the best idea, you want to try and keep your bishop. So that's why bishop a4 is the better one. You're just enforcing pressure, even though you're allowing king e2, but you get your king in. You get your king in, a little bit more in. Now what do you do? So you see that your position improved since the first position that we saw. But how do you actually finish the game off? Yes, you are correct. You don't want to move the knight until... So that this square is very important. You don't want your opponent to get the knight here, because then if this knight gets free, the other knight will jump to b3 and it will cause a lot of unpleasant situations. And remember how I hate giving my opponent any chance, and I've been when someone asks me what is my chess style, I tell them snake style. You just like go around your opponent and basically putting pressure and not letting the opponent slip away like a snake most of the time. So that is why I wouldn't touch this knight before he touches his knight. So not knight b6. So one thing that you can realize is, okay, so your knight is doing a good job here. You don't want to change the pawn structure. Your king is great there. Is your bishop doing anything there? Could you improve the bishop? Yes, probably some of you said this before, but pawn takel is the first one that I'm seeing that said bishop b5. So good job. And you are gonna go over here. Thank you. Boa or Python, either one. I'll take both. Let's combine them. Boatine. Okay, so you bring in the bishop and you're gonna go over here to d3. So that is why white would try to cover up the d3 square, because if you get bishop d3, it's extremely unpleasant, and it might even be creating some mating nets. So knight c1. Now this knight is free. There is no more pressure on c5 square, so you bring in your knight. You see how everything is moving together and how like all of the pieces have this nice coordination. So now white has this king freed up a little because the a2 is defended by c1. So king up. What do you do now? So another important topic in like middle game, end game, or any part of chess when you have advantage is to convert those advantages. So you can see that you have spatial advantage and your pieces are more active, but at some point you have to realize that even though your pieces are really nicely placed, there's always something that you can improve and something that you can try to possibly exchange off. So that's one of those situations that it's a good idea to keep an open mind. And that is why here knight c4 is a good idea. Especially because if you take, I just take with the bishop and I'm going for a2. So what you can do is just put the king back, and eventually you're going to get into a zugzwang situation, and I'm going to take your pawn when you move the king away. Or if you go king a1, that is also very unpleasant, because eventually the bishop can come and take the other pawns, and this is very very in favor of black. So that's why knight can't take it, but I'm also attacking e3, so the knight goes all the way back to the first rank. You can see how the pieces are super cool positioned and everything. So keeping that in mind, what do you want to do as black? Bishop a4, interesting. But you have you have a move that is more Python-like. Bishop a4 is good, but you have a better move. You have a stronger move. Knight b2. Good job. Great. Knight b2. You're attacking f1, so knight tries to run away. And now, what should you do? This move is actually kind of different than the written. So if you don't find it, don't feel weird. This is one of those moves. So just think about it, and if you find it, great. If not, no, don't worry about it. a5 is interesting, but so the knight came to g3, and knight could possibly cause some discomfort if knight jumps to h5. So yes, g6, very, very good job. You take away the h5 square. So now white tries to get some stuff with e4. Now what do you want to do? Bishop c4. Wow, interesting. I think bishop c4 is nice looking. In the game, they played knight a4. I believe bishop c4 is good as well, but I think knight a4 is interesting because it takes away the king c3 ideas. But bishop c4 should have been good enough as well. Take. Now, see, this knight doesn't really have anywhere to go. Not e2, not f1. This knight is kind of completely cut off. So white tries to bring in the knight. And now, how do you use this spatial and just really good position. How do you use it? How do you continue? Yeah, bishop f1. Good job, everyone. And you are eventually going to get some of these guys. Because if g3, you just come here and say pick up this one. And if knight f2, you pick this one up. So, now you have spatial advantage, your pieces are more active, and you have a pawn up. So we have to be very careful and finish the job. How? What would be your next move as black? A5 is very interesting. H6 also interesting, but I think the main question is which one of your pieces is not active, and how you can activate that better. Is there any piece that feels like its job is done and you want to move it to a better place? I wouldn't play f5 just because it feels a little too early. And you wouldn't know if you want f5, h5. You don't want to give a clear target to your opponent. That's why I wouldn't play f5. But, so I guess what I'm trying to say is, okay, this bishop here is doing something useful, so let it be. What about the knight? Is the knight being useful? Kinda, it's taking away this is square, this is square. What about the king? Could you bring in the king to go attack something else? So, yes, you can bring in the king. So, king b4, knight b3, and now remember how we talked about thinking about if it's the time to do some exchange maybe? So this is one of those times to consider if you want to do any sort of exchange or not. F5 is still interesting, but you have something a little bit more decisive. Keep trying to keep putting pressure. So let me ask you a question. Yeah, bishop e4, good one. I was going to ask, do you think if bishop e4 take, is this a winning endgame? Because if this is a winning endgame, then you should play bishop b4. You should give your opponent the chance to make the mistake. Bishop e4 from Barcelona, good one. So, bishop e4, not white won't take. If white wants to try and have any sort of survival chances, white should not take. So, king d2. Now you bring in the knight to c3. So those of you who suggested knight c3, good job. It's in the move order. Now, white tries to put more pressure with knight c5. Now, how do you try and finish off the game? There's few moves left, and There's still a lot of pressure to be put. Yes, knight c3. After knight c3, c5, a5. Good job. So, after a5, white is pretty tied up. So the only tiny tricks that white could do is maybe to do a3 and beg, please take me so I can take c3. So, a3, king c4, obviously. And white tries to bring in more pressure with king e3 and try to maybe take that pawn or something and try chances in the endgame. Also, king c4, you were attacking d4, so king e3 is the only move. Now, what do you do as black? There's one really cute, this is actually a pretty cute move. You put, ooh, I don't want to say it. Hold on, I'll give you a few more seconds before I give up the answer. No? So I have a lot of f5s. Do you mean pawn or bishop? So the thing is, if you put your bishop over here, this bishop is paralyzing this one and this one, so it's like such a cool square. And after bishop f5, none of these knights can actually get in. So white can try his chances with like knight b7, but you get a4, check, king b5, try to go away, and you finally get that pawn. Try not to rush, because it is, I mean, you can just take it right now, but knight c3 and you would lose a4 or d5, so that's why I play bishop c2. Keep all of your pawns together, strong, and next move, this guy's coming. So this was actually a very brilliant game by Yusupov. I really enjoyed it. I don't know about you guys, but it was very interesting to just watch how someone like Yusupov with that high chess understanding just keeps putting pressure all the sides. Remember, first from this position you got to this position, so a position equalish looking. Black brought in the king, brought in the knight, pushed the bishop to the other side, and started to get advantage on the other side, and just completely just went all over the board and won the game. So that was actually a very cool game. I really hope you guys enjoyed it. So what about this one? What do you think this position should happen, and what do you think the position needs? Thank you for the birthday wishes. Are we calling it a birthday week? We can do that too. I already had 48 hours. I don't think this was a Maroczy. So yeah, this is white to move. Let me know what you think white should do, and what realistically, what is the result? So we're having some stuff about bishop b4, f4, ef5. Okay, ef5, interesting. Yeah, king Lear, you're correct. So the idea is take f4 and then knight f3. Now, do you think this position, how is it? Is it is it good? Is it bad? Who do you want to be? So yeah, that's the thing. This is actually a very equal drawish position, and it was Capablanca. So kudos to whoever said if this is a Capablanca game. And yeah, all right. Let's go to the next one. This is I mean, this position still has a lot to like look over. There could be knight e5 you can consider. Rook e1. There's a lot of things to consider, but realistically, between high-level players, there's not much to actually fight for. So, what about this one? White to move. Things might be getting a little bit more spicy. So, any knight d5 check. You have something much more interesting than knight d5 or knight b1. g4, I mean, I said spicy. Are you trying to spice it up for your opponent? So this move is kind of pushy, but the right kind of pushy. Knight d5, okay, knight d5 is interesting, but your biggest problem is that knight on d7. You can't attack it. Because let's say knight d5, take. How are you going to get this knight out of there? You can't play bishop b6 because that creates weakness and your bishop can't go anywhere. So this would be kind of dead. So, what would you do? Knight a4. Good job for all of you who spiced it up. Taking is equal to losing. You take on a4, rook comes to c4, and then the a4 is pretty much dead already. So, you can't really take it. Let's say bishop b3. What do you do now? Yes. Knight c5, I think it's kind of, I think it serves the same purpose, but there is something stronger. Yes, knight b6. So the thing is, knight c5 is strong, but what if take, then you're gonna take it with the pawn. And it is strong because you get the c6 and d7, but it's better to have this as passed pawn. And taking on d1 isn't really smart, because just take over here if king e6, knight c5, and then take this guy, because everything is a check. So knight b6, a b6, take. Now what do you do? This was spicy, right? See, Yusupov doesn't only show the games that he won, he shows the games that his opponent played beautifully too. I try to do that, you know. I try to do that too in my classes. But it's kind of painful. Oh, true, Josh is correct too. If knight c5, bishop e6 kind of holds everything together. So yeah, knight b6 just sometimes goes better with the gut, because knight b6 you are attacking more and you're enforcing that exchange. Yep, b7 is a good one. Well, rook b8 seems to be the only kind of reasonable way to try, but take, and d7, and this is already really lost, isn't it? Baby queens. No, these are not baby queens. These are full-grown queens at this point. Okay, so next one. Are you guys still not tired of these boring-looking endgames? So this is white to move, and I know, we all hate rook endgames, but we gotta know it. To be honest, I would prefer to do endgames all day, every day, if I never have to do organic chemistry again. But can't do that. Have an exam coming up and a final coming up, then I'll be free. But, so, how do you want to use your advantage in this position? So I have a suggestion of rook e5. But, okay, so the first thing to do, especially in endgames with little pieces left, is to think about, is this endgame better winning for me in the pawn endgame? So if the rooks are off the board now, then the pawn endgame is winning, right? So that's why you should go and offer rook exchange. And now push. So now you are two pawns up, you are a pawn up, and you have partially cut the king, but your king is also cut. So you have to play it really smart to be able to free your king and keep the pawn and all of those cool stuff. So let's say king f7. What do you want to do? So yeah, you can bring in the king to b2. So bring in the king, and now what do you do? g4 is interesting, but earlier on, but you kind of need your g pawn to keep everything like a glue. So yeah, good job. G3. Glue. Keep your pawns. You're not in a rush. Then bring in your king slowly, slowly. Now check which side you are going to go. So you could use the idea of the triangle stuff a little bit. And so my advice is right now, instead of starting to calculate moves, try to imagine a position in which black would be in some sort of a zugzwang that would have to move the king or move the rook, and then you could use that tempi. So yeah, you put your king on c4, rook goes back. Now what? How will you win this endgame? I have bad shoulders. King, I'm still not seeing the move, guys. Rook g6, you don't want to give up your a pawn. a5 pawn. King d4, King d4. No. Okay, so rook g6 is something that you should do after you've done this triangle idea. King b3, good job. King b3. So if king b3, king d6, now you get king b4. So basically you are just waiting for a move. If your opponent gives you check, you could consider something like king a2. Emphasizing and considering, because if king a2, now your pawn is safe, and now you want to take g6. Even though your king is a little too passive, but you get the chance to eat the pawn. But that's why black won't touch the rook, and black would play king d6. I would also like to point out that black is a world champion, Max Euwe, so he's not just some random guy that we don't know about, who doesn't know endgame. So he knew what he was doing, and he still got a little bit stuck. So king d6, king b4. Now this is that brilliant idea, because check, king here, rook a1, now the king has to go in. See? So in this position, after rook a1, the king couldn't go in. So you wanted to get the same position, just with the king a little bit away. So you could play king b5. Everyone good? So, and you get to play king b5, check, king a6, king c6, and you eat the pawn, and happily ever after. King b3 is a very cool zugzwang, right? Okay, so any questions on this? Hopefully, no. Let's do a few more of these endgames, and then we'll look at Kasparov game. So this one is white's to move, and first of all, what do you think who do you think has advantage? And depending on your answer, then you know what to push for. Well, Dennis Miller, that's the thing. A lot of these positions, you probably wouldn't have, if you just looked at it for the first time, you wouldn't know. Honestly, you wouldn't know. So that's why we do this homeworks and puzzles and classes and just look into different positions. So when it happens in the game, then you're like, oh yeah, I remembered that idea. I saw it in a guy who played against Euwe and he beat him. So good night, Zeppel. So that's kind of why. That's why we do these. That's why we try to take our time and go over them. Black has better pieces and more active king. True. It is wise to move. Knight d4 is interesting, but knight e1. So good job to those of you who said knight e1. And the idea is that after knight e1, you are gonna go try and put the knight on d3 and then see if the knight can go anywhere better, or then you can just try to do like king c4. So knight c3 to not allow king c4, knight d3. Now what do you think black should do? So some of the things to think about for what the black should do is, you see black has a space and black seems to have the spatial advantage. But one problem that's coming up right now is knight e5. Knight e5 would be attacking this guy and attacking the knight on c3. So that's something that you could work on. King d5, King d5 is interesting, but what would you do after knight b4 check and then knight c6? Because you can't bring in the king in, so you have to go back and then a7 pawn. So knight e2 is very interesting, mainly because, let's say if you play knight b4 now, trying to go to c6 square, well, one possibility that I can think of is going after d4. So maybe something like knight d4, take, and then the bishop comes to g1 and goes to h2, and all of these pawns are looking kind of weirdish. So that's why you wouldn't let your opponent play such a move such as knight d4. So after knight e2, you see knight d4 is potentially uncomfortable. So you just play king c4, put your king in a cool place. Knight c3, now what do you want to do? You could bring the king back and just see what if your opponent wants to repeat, but you have a better chance. After knight c3, what do you want to do with white? Gobble gobble, that's a good idea. Yeah, so king c4, knight c3, attacking a4. Thank you. I can't imagine. Yep, we have doubled up today. Alright, we are considering illegal moves. Perfect. Okay, so a5 is the move you guys should be seriously considering. And the idea of a5 is, well, if you take, which you kind of have to, I take this guy. And now I have this super cool passed pawn. And you can't really stop it. You could try to bring in the knight and see what the hell it goes, what happens then. But even trying that... So you eliminated the idea of knight a3. And knight d2 is not that dangerous, but still you would want to have some protection for this guy. So what would you do? Yeah? What's up? How are you guys doing? Marcus, we did have a lot of blitz happening just right before we started to switch to YouTube. We had a bunch of blitz playing and stuff, and the class before that on our Twitch channel. And yes, I am mixing it up. We have few more puzzles to cover up about strategic endgames, and then we'll switch to how to beat Kasparov in 13 steps. I don't think he's going to like seeing that, but well, if he sees it, sure. He can. Okay, so knight e1 is interesting, but knight e5 is the best one. You push, push. If take, take, check. We don't really care about this one anymore. And you get the chance to... You have two cool pass pawns, and black can't stop them both. Or you could even give this check first, if you want to. So, knight e5, knight d2 was played first. King d5 is interesting, but king d5 wasn't played. King d3 was played. King d5. I'm thinking might have... the only thing that I can see about why this isn't good, this wasn't played, was maybe a4. But a4, there's always b6 and king e6, and this is just really good for white anyways. So I feel like both of them are good moves. If you guys actually know what is why king d5 wasn't played, let me know. And so king d3, knight b3, bishop e3, always doing that paralysis idea. a4, slowly bring in your king. And now this is just winning, because this guy is falling. There's all these ideas of picking up the bishop. And yeah, this was a very interesting game. Alright. Okay, so I'm gonna put this position up, and I'm gonna ask in the chat, because we have done a lot of puzzles already. Do you guys want to do a few more puzzles, maybe 2-3 more puzzles, or you want to switch it to the Kasparov game? Because my vote is kind of for Kasparov game, and we could pick up the end games another time, because we have a lot of end games to go over all the time. So this position is up here for those of you who want to think about it. For those of you who want to switch it up, let me know. So we have more puzzles to Kasparov. 2 puzzles to Kasparov. 2 puzzles, 3 Kasparov, 4 Kasparov, 5, 6. Ooh. We have a lot of Kasparov, guys. Okay, let's switch it to Kasparov. So if you want, you can take a picture of this, and next time I'm doing end games, so either Tuesday or Thursday, I will start with this one. So feel free to have that somewhere and think about it. So alright, This is the Kasparov game, and the idea is I'm showing you this game from the book called Giants of Strategy from Neil McDonald, 2007 or 9. He wrote two books. Oh, yeah, Giants of Strategy and Giants of Power Play. I really, really like these two books. I think those would be among my favorite ones, definitely. And so this specific game was very interesting because in the book they actually called it How to Beat Kasparov in 13 Steps, and I just love that title, and I've been dying to show it in one of my classes. Okay, so this is a game between Karpov and Kasparov in World Championship in 1990. This is game 17. Well, 17. Okay, I couldn't help my feelings bubbling up. Okay, so Karpov is a huge. He plays. I mean, all of the a lot of openings, e4, d4. But I remember that in their matches, d4 was played a lot, like Queen's Gambit, the Queen's Indian. Sorry, not Queen's Gambit. Queen's Indian, Nimzo Indian. There are lots of those played, and so this is actually exchanged Gruenfeld, which is just as cool, maybe slightly cooler. I played Gruenfeld a while ago and I liked it. I really liked how active it was, and so far it's mainly theory and both players are just trying to get the pieces out. So that's why I'm just going over it quite quickly, because I really want to get to the steps. And so with both players, you are just trying to develop normally. You put that knight to c6, bishop belongs on g7. Bishop on g4 is a little wobbly, so most likely you're going to have to relocate it. There you go. And you still, as white, you still have kind of to finish the development. You probably think this bishop belongs either on c4 or d3. Well, the king is definitely going to do short castle. So you try to do the short castle, and some stuff like knight c4 might work, but there's always this b7 that's hanging at the end. So that's why Kasparov tried to bring the bishop instead of the knight. b5 to put some more enforcement on c4 square. a6 just to bring more protection. Now exchanging the bishop off, exchanging a pair of rooks. And so this is the first position that you could start to think about. And so this is actually step 1 of 13. And so the position looks kind of equalish, and you could think that black could get some advantage because the queenside pawn majority and all, but Karpov is going to show you how you can start these 13 steps, and you are going to exploit the open c file with rook c1. And so step 1, you put the rook on the open file. So rook c1. After rook c1, knight c4 isn't really good idea because of knight d2. So pretty much the only logical move is queen b7. Now what do you think should be step 2? Thank you guys for all the positive comments and positivity. Very nice. 17. 1-7. So step 2, you could consider a very nice, creating a very nice outpost for your knight with white. Queen a3 is interesting, but it wouldn't really do much. Trading the bishop, not yet. Queen a3 is interesting, but it's... What would you do after knight c4? So, d5, good job. Good job, Fragrance. d5. So your step 2 is to advance the d-pawn, and you create this pretty cool outpost for your knight. Knight comes to c4. Okay, so knight c4 is the move that was played, and rook c8 is the move that's worth considering, but the problem is take, and you lose the pawn. So black could bring the knight into the game, but that knight on a5 is really, what's the right word? Just not in the game. Just the easiest way to say it is just not in the game. And white already got this passed pawn, and then e5 could be coming, so not really pleasant for black. So knight c4, trying to bring in the knight. So step 3, this knight is annoying. Remove the obstruction from c file. How do you want to do that? Offside, Graham, yeah. There you go, baby queen on d5, true. So, step 1, you got the c file. Step 2, you played d5, got the outpost on c6. Step 3, remove the annoying knight. And someone just say the word. a4 is interesting, but not the right kind of interesting. Knight d2. Good job, be easy. Knight d2. Take. Now, step 4, you're going to prevent black from creating an outpost, like black using the you are going to prevent black from creating an outpost of his own on the c file. So, you are going to take it with the bishop, because if you took it with the queen, now black gets to do the outpost with b4. And then bishop c3 is coming, and then black is blocking your c file. So you don't want to do that. So that is why, in order to keep the control of c3 square, you gotta take it with the bishop. So that was your step 4. Rook c8. Now what do you want to do? I'm going to wait on a little bit before announcing what Neil McDonald said as a step 5, but this is a very cool game, and I very much enjoyed his commentary on this and the way he put the steps. So I wish I could start to do a commentary more like that. I'm actually going to try. I have tried a little bit on stepping it, but it's just not this beautiful. Well, I mean, I'm not Karpov, so. But rook c6, very good job. You're very good, King Lear. What is your rating? Rook c6. And the idea is very simple. Step 5, you're going to seize control of the outpost square that you created on step 2 with d5. So you're gonna look at the tactical stuff and be like, okay, so if the queen takes, then you have check and bishop h6, which is a forced mate. And that is why rook c6, black wouldn't take it. After rook c6, what do you think black should do, actually? Let's get some input on what black should do. So for black, we said rook c6 doesn't work. So if rook c6 doesn't work, you kind of have to be able to play something with black, right? So bishop e5 seems to be the only one, because you're kind of evacuating the g7 square, and now you want to take on c6, because at the end, if queen d8, king g7, and you get to run away a little bit. So bishop e5. Now rook takes c6 is a threat. What would you want to do? Or we can ask, what would Karpov do? So WWKD. It is tough for black, but after bishop e5, it's white to move. So what should whites do? Queen c2 is interesting, but you have something really stronger. So let me tell you what is the problem of queen c2. If queen c2, rook takes c6, you take with the pawn, queen c7, and the problem is, how can you can't really just break through this blockade on c7. And that's why we have step 6. You are going to force the black bishop from the excellent e5 square. So that is why you as white are going to push the bishop away. It's just, someone tell me how. f4 is unnecessary risk. So for those of you who are suggesting f4 unnecessary risk, I see Mark N said bishop c3. If someone earlier said that, sorry, that's just the first one I saw. Bishop c3 is the good one. Bishop c3, you are pushing this bishop away. And the thing is, if bishop takes c3, queen takes c3, if rook takes, now you take with d, and now that's a giant pass pawn. And if rook goes to e8, queen comes to c5, and this is just way too much pressure. And rook c7 also coming up, taking up e7. It is just one of those positions where you just wish you weren't black. So that's what would happen after bishop c3. Now, what do you think would happen after rook takes c6? So again, when you play a move such as bishop c3, it's a brilliant move, but you have to have calculated the best possibilities for your opponent. So the logical candidate moves are, first of all, checks. Not really any logical checks here. Then bishop takes on c3, rook takes on c6, and the last one, the bishop to move somewhere else, bishop moving away, black's bishop from e5 moving away, let's say to b8 or somewhere. And so those should be the three moves that you calculate for black. So you take dc, and for example, queen comes to c7, you exchange these, check and push, and that's already a grown queen at this point. Okay, so my point was to try and get you guys to be comfortable with calculating the best moves for your opponent as well. So bishop c3 worth calculating, rook c6 is worth calculating, and so bishop b8 is the only one that is not losing on spot. And now Karpov's getting to step 7. And you are going to put the queen on d4, simply threatening bye-bye, mate. And you are also going to ideally, when black stops the mate threat with only possible f6, then you are going to complete your step 7 and put the queen on the super cool and crucial c5 square. You can delay playing queen c5 a little bit, because you could try and play queen c3, which is another cool way. And the main point is that you are just getting in touch with this square, and you are also weakening the black king. So let's look at f6. So right now black is threatening. If it was black to move again, and let's say white didn't do anything, black would take. And if you give check, king up, take, take. So you don't want this position to happen, because you don't want your bishop to be hanging down here. So going back to this position after f6, now you know if it's black to move again, black would take your rook and attack your bishop, and your bishop would be hanging in at the end, right? So in order to avoid that hanging of your bishop, you should do what? Alright, so now while you guys think a little bit about it, I'm going to read the chat. Music, I believe there would be some, according to my understanding, music on YouTube is not really recommended. I don't know enough about it. Tracy? Let's see what else. No, there was a question about music on YouTube. Tracy's laughing. I believe it's so. I wish I was like a DJ, had this like huge set, and then there was like a exciting scene coming up. I would play something. Some smoke would come up. Some cool ideas, right? But well. Ay. Yes. Good job. Do you want to move the bishop? Bishop a5. So bishop a5 is really paralyzing all of these squares as well. And so let me look at queen c5 for a second. So queen c5, I believe there is still the issue of you taking and I taking and queen c7, and this is still pretty stuck. I think that's one of the reasons queen c5 is not played. Also, I think that's the only reason, because bishop, this is going to be taken with check, so you can't play anything else. You have to move the rook, and taking is the best one. And even if you were to take with the queen, I am not sure how you're going to win this with white, because there's a clear path for black's king to get there. And it would at least create unnecessary complications. So that's why bishop a5. Always just keep pushing, put the pressure, and yep. Okay, so bishop a5, and black white bishop d6. Bishop e5 is possible too, but then you just play queen c5, and now that you're controlling this critical c7 square, after take, this queen c7 can't be anymore, or even taking with queen is pretty cool too, because, well, this bishop c5 doesn't exist anymore. So, step 7 was to play this queen d4 and weaken the king side and bring in the queen to control more of the queen side as well. Now, step 8 after f6 is to put the bishop on a5 to control c7 square, which is a very crucial 7th rank point. So bishop a5, bishop d6, bishop d6, And now this should be an easy to find move for everyone. And anyways, I'm just going to say what is step 9. Step 9 is to support the rook and gain the control of this c file. So that being said, what do you think is the move? Yep, queen c3. Good job, everyone. So if black were to take, this is just next move is c7, and this is already like I wish I had that button, just like going all the way down. I tried. Okay, so black tries to play rook c8, and at this point we are reaching our step 10. Black is kind of powerless, so you're going to make some useful consolidating moves before increasing the pressure on the c file. So what do you think are these consolidating moves for white? While you think of that, I'm gonna look at the chat. I have some Persian friends over here. Cool. Hello? You are a chess trick addict. So am I. Let's form a group. Question: how often do I do these sessions? It kind of depends, but for this week and next week, I am teaching Tuesdays, Thursdays, Fridays, and Sundays. We'll see what happens after that, but the same schedule is going to hold for next week as well. So tomorrow we have the tactics and king and pawn warfare. So tune in for those. A3, wow, proud of you guys. A3, good one, good job. And then G3, wow, you guys are on fire. Black tries to just play some move like king g7, g3. Nasty queen f6. Maybe, but it's not what the position needs. Your pieces are already superly good placed. You don't really need to give your opponent chances. a3 is great, g3 is great. So let's say bishop e5, you bring in the queen, h5, and Kasparov is trying to move some stuff. He moved the rook away, but the problem for white is that white can't play this rook c7 yet because of this bishop. So your rook can't invade the c7 square just yet. So what do you think you should do? Hint, step 11 is to drive the black bishop away from this defense on c7. f4, good move, but something less chance giving to your opponent. Bishop c7, great. Now, what do you think black should do? I'm going to give you guys a minute to just absorb the position, give me some ideas on what black should do and what would white do in response to that. Storm, you are funny. So, what do you guys think is happening? What's your recommendation? So, first of all, if you take, I just take, and e7 is bye-bye. So, now you can't really take it. And rook c8, I don't think it works. You just take on e5. And that's also tactically kind of dead. So the only thing that black could try to do is bishop a1. And now the thing is, with bishop a1, you already gave up the c7 square. So the step 12 of 13 to do for white is to clear the c7 square for the rook without letting this bishop come back to e5. So what would the move be? I'm glad I'm keeping some GMs interested. I thought you guys already know all of these games. Tea, Earl Grey. I'm a huge fan of dark tea. So, you guys already know step 12, but what do you think is the move for it? Bishop f4. Great, good job. So now, if you were to play bishop e5, I would just take it and rook c7, already bye-bye. Bishop f4, queen d7 was like the only move to try and play. And step 13, you seize the 7th rank and party! Rook c7. So, this is the step 13. Black, all of black's opposition down the c file have been crushed. You push the rook away, you push the bishop away, and Kasparov is kind of unable to prevent the decision you can't stop the rook c7. And also, another fun little treat is this d pawn, cause when you play like queen d8, what do you think is coming? Exactly, d6 is coming up. Now you're understanding more about step 7. You remember step 7 was queen d4 that you attacked for mate and also started to weaken the king side. So that's the value of step 7. And f6 really weakens the king. And so this is really uncomfortable. So Kasparov tried to play something like g5, and what would you do as white? Oh, what happened last Sunday? Easter. Easter happened. So the club was closed on Easter, and yeah. So hold on, I still want move from you guys. What should white do? How are you going to beat Kasparov? Rook e7 is interesting. Bishop g5, I think, kind of interesting, but you would be giving your opponent unnecessary chances. You have something way more forceful and just pushy. And d7, thank you. So bishop g5 is interesting, but exactly like you have something that you know you're gonna win for sure. Rook e7, also interesting, but d7, like when d7 keeps a black queen and rook just kind of stuck there, why would you play rook e7 to free them? Rook f8 now. There are a few more moves, so bear with me and tell me what would you do as white? These are pretty cool moves. I am a Kasparov fan as well, but it's always fun to watch. maybe. All of the moves you're saying is a big maybe, but be careful with your bishop hanging here. Or you just want to give it up. Yes, bishop d2, a5. Very nice. Bishop d2, you are going to go to a5. Let's say bishop e5. What do you do? So after bishop d2, bishop e5, you ideally don't want to give your rook up, and you want to try your best to keep your pieces. So yeah, rook b7. And so here I believe Kasparov resigned, but the thing is, there's just no good moves. And let's say if it's white to move again, white can simply play queen, something like queen a7, and then take over here, and then play bishop a5, and there's nothing that black could do to stop it. And so yeah, there's that. That's how you beat Kasparov. And the other problem is if you as black just move your queen anywhere, well, if you move it there, there's also this check, so never mind. But if you just generally try to move your queen, I mean, if you could, there's also bishop a5 coming, so it's a whole mess. Let's say you try to play, like, I'm just brainstorming, king f7 to keep this guy, and again, you can't really do much, because this, least of all, like super least of all. So that is how you beat Kasparov in 13 steps. The steps were really cool, and that's something that I try to do with my games when I go back and I look at them. And that's really interesting. I don't think that was Karpov's preparation, like I'm gonna do step 1 this, step 2 that, but it's turned out pretty cool. It is kind of a zugzwang, but I mean the position is really sucky, so it's just not really a zugzwang too. Alright, so I'm gonna switch back to a few more puzzles so we can wrap it up with more puzzles. So now you saw the power of strategic game. So you saw how knowing strategy can help you get this positions. And so yeah, it is very much worth it. Alright, so whoops, we did this puzzle already, this one. So we left off at this puzzle earlier, and I wasn't sure how long the 13 steps would take. So how do you think this game is gonna turn out? Some of you already looked at this position, but yeah, just let me know what you think. It is white to move, and strategy. So white is indeed better. b5 is interesting, but you still have a lot to do in the king side before you come to the queen side, because logically queen side is where you are going to actually win. So like most likely you are going to be able to take the b6 pawn and push the b pawn to queen, most likely. And so in order to get that, you need to do other stuff in the king side to be able to get to that queen side. So it is white to move. Yes, h4. Good job, you guys. h4, h5. Now what do you do? Um, Bishop a3 is interesting, but Bishop c3 is better. Mainly because you are just not giving that d4 square to the knight. So bishop c3, let's say king goes to e8 to attack your rook. Rook b7, logical. King d8. Now what do you do as white? White to move. What do you want to do? b5, b5, knight c5. Be careful, guys. Bishop d2, no. Knight d4. Nope. Nope. Don't touch the p-pawn. Yeah, rook b8. And now, well, if king goes to c7, you can't do this rook h8 stuff and go after this guy. So that's why king goes to e7, and you still can try for rook h8, but g6, and you can't really you can't get this pawn. If the king was on c7, then you could get the pawn, but now king f7 and protects the pawn. So rook h8 doesn't work. Now what do you guys do? g4 is interesting, but b5. Finally, you finally get to do your b5. And well, knight c5 doesn't really make any more sense. So rook d6, you bring out your king. Knight c5. Now you have a pretty logical slash cool move. What would you do now? Bishop b4. Good job, you guys. What after rook d4? Kinda have to play king c3 as your only move. Check. Where do you go now? You could play king c4, but the problem is you don't really want the repetition. Fun fact, I played with Black Rosentelis in 2015. I lost pretty badly, but that's one of the games that I might show because my opponent played so nice. But yeah, king c2, rook d4. What do you do now? You don't want perpetual, so no more king c3. you don't want to take on c5 just yet, because you have a better move, and then you can't. Yeah, rook b7 check, and then you take. So now this endgame is winning. You take this pawn, and you play rook b7. I went through these moves because they were easy, and I mean logical. So now king f8. Now how do you try and finish the game off? b6 is interesting, but maybe bring some pieces up. Yes, these moves played by Rosenthalis and Yusupov and me. Yes, we are trying to go over why they did what they did and how we can try to teach ourselves to do that in our games. So that's the basic idea. So king c3, let's say king g8, trying to protect these guys over here. And now what do you do? How do you actually get your pieces to go in a little bit? Yep, g4. Good job. Take, and king g8. So you see, the thing is, with in the rook endgame with b pawn, I don't know how to exactly show it, but it's good to have the king between h8 and g8, because hold on, I don't want to say it wrong, because alright, let's say I'm just going to brainstorm just for a second, and let's say if right now you play king f7, it's blunder because of rook h8, take, and you lose the rook. So that's why Rosenthalis is trying to keep his king between h8 and g8 so he can keep it between h7 and g7, but because of this h pawn, that's not going to pay off. So g4, you play g4 to create the h5 to create the h pass pawn. So now you have two pass pawns. So eventually, at the end of the lines, one of these two are going to become queen, basically. So, and here he just kind of gave up and took the pawn, went back. And now, how would you finish off the game as white? Yes, rook c7. Good job. Black tried to just survive a little bit longer and not really doing much of it because there's a queen on the board. So yeah, I have a lot of these kind of puzzles, the strategic ones mixed with some dynamic. Don't really have another how to beat Kasparov tutorial, but I will try to comment on the games and do them like step by step, because that seems to work very well. And I am doing endgame and tactics tomorrow, 5 to 7, so be sure to tune in for those. And I am glad you guys enjoyed today's session. See you tomorrow.